So the NBA playoffs have just officially started, the best time of the year, and this season is a season where multiple teams look like they could legitimately win the NBA championship or at least upset a top seed. And every team has an X factor that could swing whether or not they win the series. An X factor is a player who isn't necessarily the best player on the team, but he's a very important player who is very important to the team's success. If he plays bad, the team will probably lose. If he plays good, then they probably will win. In today's video, I'll be naming each teams in the Eastern Conference's X Factor. But before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. And comment on this video to start a conversation with me as I do respond to all of my comments. And I'll play that intro. We start the video off with the number 1 seed Philadelphia 76ers, and in my opinion, their X factor is clearly Tobias Harris, who although is one of their 3 best players, he is so important to how good they will be this season that I think I couldn't choose anyone else. Because although Philadelphia's 2 best players in Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons are great players, none of them are perimeter scorers. And no matter how great Embiid is in the post, if you want to be successful, you're going to need a guy who could be on the perimeter and create his own shot at an elite level. And Tobias Harris during the regular season has fit this role very well, but over the past 2 Philadelphia playoff runs, Tobias has played absolutely horrible, and he was a big reason why they didn't go as far as maybe they should have. And against the Nets, the 76ers are going to need him to be big and provide quality perimeter scoring, and if he can do that, they might just have a chance to make the NBA Finals. We then go to the 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference, and that is the Brooklyn Nets, and in my opinion, their X factor is Nicholas Claxton. And a lot of you casuals might be like, who is that? But on a team filled with superstars and star players, it's kind of hard to find an X factor since it seems like offensively at least, they have very few weaknesses. But on the defensive side of the floor, Brooklyn really struggles, especially guarding the pick and roll and things like that. But luckily for them, during the regular season, Claxton has shown the ability to be a great defensive center. And against teams like Milwaukee with Giannis Antetokounmpo and the 76ers with Joel Embiid, he's going to be very critical to whether or not they can go all the way to the NBA Finals and win the championship. We then go to the 3rd seed in the Milwaukee Bucks, and in my opinion, the Bucks' X factor is Dante DiVincenzo, who in my opinion is a very underrated player, as he plays his role very well, which is to be a guy who hits 3-pointers and plays good defense. And if the Bucks want to go all the way to the NBA Finals, it's gonna Dante to step up, especially considering how tough their path will be. They can use as much help as they can get, because if Dante can have a series where he averages 13 points, shooting over 40% from 3, along with playing good defense, it could honestly really help the Bucks and improve their chances to beat teams like the Nets, Heat, or the 76ers in upcoming rounds and in their current round right now, because the Heat are not an easy matchup. We then go to the 4th seed in the conference in the New York Knicks, and if I'm being honest, I think their X factor is RJ Barrett. And yes, I'm aware that he is their 2nd best player, but although RJ has had a fantastic season this year and he's underrated in my opinion, he's still a pretty inconsistent player. Some days he could play like an all-star and some days he could play like an absolute bum. And in this series against Atlanta, I think these 2 teams are pretty evenly matched. So I think the X factor for the Knicks is whether or not RJ plays great. Because if he plays great, I honestly would predict New York to win the series. But the reason I don't think they will win it is because I feel like RJ will have a bad series since he seems like a very inconsistent player. And I think the Hawks game planning for him will be a bit too much for him. We then go to the 5th seed in the conference, and that's the Atlanta Hawks. And in my opinion, I believe their X factor is none other than DeAndre Hunter, who was a player who was injured a lot this season, but in the games he played, he showed a lot of progression from his rookie season. But in the series versus New York, I think these 2 teams are pretty evenly matched, as I said, and Trae Young and John Collins will be getting a lot of attention from the defense. And I feel like if Hunter can step up and be a 3rd scorer for them, it would give them an advantage that they need to win the series. And I do think there's a chance that Bogdan Bogdanovic can easily take control and be this 3rd scorer for this team, or maybe even Lou Williams. But if I had if I had to guess who I think it will be, I would say DeAndre Hunter, since Bogdanovich is pretty inconsistent and Lou Williams always chokes in the playoffs. I actually think DeAndre Hunter will step up this postseason, unlike RJ Barrett. We now move on to the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference in the Miami Heat, and in my opinion, the Heat's X factor is Goran Dragic. And this is because last year when Miami made the NBA Finals, underratedly, a lot of people thought their third best player was someone like Tyler Hero, but it was actually Goran Dragic. And there were several games where Dragic was Miami's actual best player. And in this first game versus Milwaukee, we saw that he was the best player for the Heat on the court in that game, and he nearly led them to a game 1 upset. So I think it's pretty clear, if Miami wants to get out of the first round, let alone even make the NBA Finals, Goran Dragic is going to have to play very, very well. We now move on to the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference in the Boston Celtics, and in my opinion, their X factor is Marcus Smart. And this is because Jason Tatum and Kemba Walker will be asked to do a lot of heavy lifting for this team without Jaylen Brown. But even if those two play fantastic, which they did the complete opposite of in Game 1, they still probably won't win unless they can have a guy who could step up and play well. And I think Marcus Smart is the most likely player to do that for the Celtics, as he's a very streaky and inconsistent guy who can have a game going off for 20 points and have a game scoring less than 10 points and missing 5 threes. So if Smart can play very well in a few games, kind of like how he did in the first game, hopefully that can help Boston avoid getting swept, because if we're being honest, they don't have a chance to win this series. We now move on to the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference in the Washington Wizards, and in my opinion, I believe their X factor is Rui Hachimura. And this is because in the series versus the Philadelphia 76ers, obviously Washington is going to be the underdog in the series, and Philadelphia's elite defense will be hounding and focusing on guys like Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook a lot. So with all that pressure being on them, they're going to need a third guy on offense who could get buckets. And honestly, Rui Hachimura is the most likely guy to do that and become their third scorer, because he has shown many flashes that he could be an efficient high teen scorer. And if he could do that, it would be a ginormous advantage for the Wizards, and it might not necessarily guarantee them to win this series, but it could help them push it to 6 or maybe even 7 games. Anyways guys, that's it for the video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with what I said in the video. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content, and tell me my goal of 1,000 subscribers, and comment on this video, start a conversation with me, as I do respond to all comments. And I'm out.